Rub some lotion on my back? Ivy stood in the kitchen doorway holding a bottle of aloe vera gel, her shoulders pink and peeling from a weekend she swore was just a walk by the lake. My hands went numb around my coffee mug. This was not in the roommate agreement. There was no clause for this. I need to back up because none of this makes sense unless you understand how a structural engineer with zero interest in relationships ended up splitting rent with the most complicated woman he had ever met. My name is Noah Bennett. I'm 31, and 8 months ago I was sleeping on my brother's pull-out couch in Austin, Texas, after a breakup that took my apartment, half my furniture, and most of my self-respect with it. Her name was Rachel. We were together 3 years. She left on a Tuesday with a U-Haul and a text that said, "I think we both know this isn't working," which is the kind of sentence you read 40 times looking for a version that hurts less. There isn't one. I found the listing on a Thursday night, half asleep, scrolling out of habit more than hope. 2-bedroom, split rent, professional female seeking respectful roommate, no drama. I almost didn't respond. My brother told me I had nothing left to lose, which is a strange kind of encouragement, but he was right. Ivy Hart opened the door in scrubs, hair pulled back, looking like she'd already survived a 12-hour shift before noon. She was a labor and delivery nurse, the kind of job that either hardens you or makes you gentler than anyone you'll ever meet. With Ivy, it was both. She looked me over for exactly 3 seconds and said, "You don't seem like a serial killer, but that's what they all say." I laughed before I could stop myself. That was the first time in 4 months I'd laughed at anything. We signed the lease a week later. 2 strangers, 1 kitchen, and a very clear set of ground rules taped to the refrigerator. Rule 1, knock before entering. Rule 2, no borrowing food without asking. Rule 3, written in her handwriting with extra emphasis, do not fall for your roommate. I remember reading that last one and thinking it was oddly specific for a stranger to write. I had no idea yet how much that rule was about to matter. The first month was easy in the way 2 strangers avoiding each other is easy. She worked nights. I worked days. We left notes on the counter instead of conversations. Used the last of the milk, sorry. Your package came. It's by the door. Can you not leave dishes in the sink for 3 days? This isn't a frat house. Small, sharp, forgettable things. But you can't share a kitchen with someone for 6 months and stay strangers. Somewhere around week 7, Ivy came home from a shift and sat on the kitchen floor because she said the couch felt too far away, and she told me about a delivery that went wrong, a mother who almost didn't make it, a baby who came out silent for 11 seconds before finally crying. She wasn't looking for advice. She just needed someone in the room. So I sat down on the floor next to her, in my work clothes, and said nothing for 20 minutes. That was the night the rule on the fridge started to crack. By month 3, we had a routine that felt less like roommates and more like something neither of us was ready to name. I made coffee for 2 without thinking about it. She started leaving her favorite mug on my side of the cabinet, like she wanted it closer to my hand than hers. We watched terrible reality TV on Sunday nights, her feet tucked under a blanket that somehow always ended up half on my lap. Neither of us said anything about it. Saying something would have made it real, and real things can be lost. I should tell you why Ivy was so guarded, because it explains everything that happened later. 2 years before I moved in, she was engaged to a man named Derek, a paramedic she met on shift. He proposed on a Tuesday and broke it off on a Friday, 3 weeks before the wedding, with a text message almost identical in cruelty to the one Rachel sent me. Different words, same wound. Ivy told me once, staring at the ceiling instead of at me, that she didn't trust rooms that felt too comfortable anymore. Comfortable rooms, she said, were where people learned exactly how to hurt you. That's the part nobody tells you about 2 broken people living under one roof. You don't fall for someone in spite of their scars. You fall for them because of the careful, guarded way they let you see the scars at all. My brother, Ryan, noticed it before I did. He came by one Saturday to help me fix a leaky faucet and stayed for dinner because Ivy had made too much pasta by accident, which happened suspiciously often that month. After she left for her shift, Ryan leaned against the counter and just looked at me. "You know you're in trouble, right?" he said. I told him we were just roommates. He laughed so hard he had to set his glass down. Roommates don't memorize how the other person takes their coffee. Roommates don't leave the porch light on until the other person's car pulls in. You're not fooling anyone, Noah, least of all yourself. I told him it didn't matter, that she'd been hurt before, that I'd been hurt before, and that the smartest thing 2 hurt people could do was stay exactly where they were. Close enough to be warm, far enough to stay safe. Ryan just shook his head on his way out the door. Safe, he said, is just another word for scared, if you say it long enough. I thought about that for weeks, the porch light, the extra pasta, the coffee mug that had quietly relocated to my side of the cabinet, like it had made a decision I hadn't agreed to yet. Every piece of evidence was already there. I was just too careful, or maybe too afraid, to add it up. Then came the sunburn. It was a Sunday in July, the kind of Texas heat that makes the sidewalk shimmer. Ivy had gone to the lake with coworkers and came home 2 shades darker than she left, wincing every time her shirt touched her shoulders. She stood in the kitchen doorway holding that bottle of aloe vera gel like it was a peace offering, and asked the question that had apparently been sitting on the tip of her tongue for longer than either of us wanted to admit. Can you put this on my back? I can't reach. I told her I could grab a mirror instead, half joking, mostly panicking. She just looked at me, steady, and said, Noah, it's fine. You can take your time, you know. 6 words. That's all it took to turn an ordinary Sunday into the night. Everything shifted. She sat on a kitchen chair, pulled the strap of her tank top to the side, and I knelt behind her with a bottle of aloe gel and hands that had never felt this unsteady doing something this simple. I smoothed the gel over her shoulders slowly, carefully, the way you'd handle something you were afraid to break. She didn't say anything for a long time. Neither did I. The only sound in the apartment was the hum of the refrigerator and her breathing, slow and even, the same rhythm I'd start to recognize as safe over the coming months. You always do that, she said quietly. Do what? Take care of things carefully, like you're worried you'll ruin them if you rush. I didn't have a clever answer for that. I just told her the truth. I ruined the last important thing in my life by not paying enough attention. I'm not doing that again. She turned her head just enough that I could see the side of her face, and for a second, neither of us pretended this was about sunburn anymore. I finished, screwed the cap back on the bottle, and set it on the counter. She thanked me, quiet, careful, the kind of quiet that means more is happening underneath than what's on the surface. I told her I was going to bed. She said goodnight. 2 people who had just shared something neither of them had language for yet, walking to separate rooms because that felt safer than saying what we actually meant. I lay awake that night replaying 6 words. You can take your time, you know, not about the lotion, about us. About the fact that 2 people who had both been left too fast, too carelessly, had found each other and were finally, quietly, being handled with patience instead of speed. But here's the thing about 2 guarded people almost getting somewhere honest. The universe seems to test it. 2 days later, Derek called her ex-fiancé, out of nowhere, wanting to catch up, which is the kind of phrase that means something else entirely. I watched her stare at his name on the screen for a long 10 seconds before declining the call and setting the phone face down on the counter, like she was closing a door she'd left cracked open for 2 years without realizing it. You okay? I asked. I think so, she said. Then, quieter, almost to herself, I think I finally am. She didn't explain further, and I didn't push. But that night she left her door open a few inches when she went to sleep, something she'd never done before, and I understood it for exactly what it was. Not an invitation, a message. I'm not guarding this room the way I used to. 3 weeks passed, and neither of us mentioned that night directly, but everything between us had changed its shape. She started coming home from night shifts and sitting on the edge of my bed just to talk before she slept, still in her scrubs, exhausted but unwilling to end the day without checking in. I started leaving her plate warm in the oven on nights she worked late instead of just leaving a note that said dinner was in the fridge. Small gestures, the kind that don't announce themselves but build a life brick by brick. The night it finally broke open, we were sitting on the couch, her feet in my lap like always, both of us pretending to watch a show neither of us could have summarized. I turned the TV off. She didn't ask why. I read the rule on the fridge again today, I told her. Rule 3. She went still. I wrote that rule for myself, not for you. I needed a warning I could see every morning. Did it work? She shook her head slowly, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked less like a woman guarding a door, and more like someone finally ready to open it. Not even a little, she said. You knocked the first day you moved in, and I think some part of me knew that was the whole problem. I asked her what she meant. You're the first person who's ever knocked before entering anything that mattered to me, she said. My space, my day, my guard. You never forced your way in. You just kept knocking, patiently, until I opened the door myself. I didn't kiss her that night, not right away. I told her I wanted to, and I told her I'd wait until she was ready to stop being careful with me, the way I'd been careful with her. She smiled, reached over, and peeled the fridge rule off with her own hand, right in front of me, and dropped it in the trash. "Guess we're breaking the rules now," she said. We started slow, the way careful people do. Coffee for two became dinners for two, became a life that neither of us had planned, but both of us needed. 6 months after the lotion, after the sunburn, after 6 words that changed everything, Ivy stopped calling the second bedroom the guest room and started calling it storage, because she'd already moved everything that mattered into mine. The bottle of aloe vera gel still sits on our bathroom shelf. It's mostly empty now. We've never thrown it away. Ryan brings it up every time he visits, usually over dinner, usually with a smug look on his face. "Roommates," he says, shaking his head, raising his glass toward Ivy like he's toasting his own detective work. She just laughs and reminds him he was right, and he reminds her that he's always right, and I sit there thinking about how close I came to never finding out. How easily this could have stayed 2 strangers splitting rent and passing notes on the counter instead of 2 people who learned, slowly and on purpose, how to stop being careful with everything except each other. Last month, Ivy came home from a 12-hour shift, dropped her bag by the door, and instead of collapsing on the couch, she stood in the kitchen doorway the exact same way she had that Sunday in July. No sunburn this time, just tired eyes and a small, tired smile. "Bad shift?" I asked. "Long one," she said. "Lost one, saved 2. You know how it goes." I didn't say anything clever. I just walked over, wrapped my arms around her, and let her stand there as long as she needed, the same way I let the lotion sit on her shoulders that first night, without rushing to wipe it away. Some people need advice after a hard day. Ivy just needed a room that wouldn't ask anything of her. I've learned, slowly, patiently, how to be that room. Sometimes Ivy still asks me to rub lotion on her shoulders after a long day at the lake, and every single time, she says the same 6 words, half joking now, all warmth. "You can take your time, you know." And every time, I do, because some people rush toward love and lose it just as fast. But the 2 of us learn that the ones worth keeping are the ones you take your time with. Slow, careful, patient, like something you're terrified to break because you already know exactly how much it will hurt if you do. If you've ever fallen for someone by accident, in the middle of an ordinary moment that turned into everything, I want to hear about it. Tell me your story in the comments. And if this one made you feel something, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because I bring you a new story every single week. Would you have said yes to the lotion? Or would you have handed her the mirror and run,